She won't stop crying. Sarah's mother told the production assistant, "I'm sorry. Maybe we should leave." They were in the front row at NBC Burbank Studios. Tickets her late husband had won months ago, and Sarah had been sobbing since the show started. Watching The Tonight Show without her dad was too much. The production assistant nodded sympathetically and started to escort them out. That's when Johnny Carson stopped mid-monologue. It was March 8, 1983. The Tonight Show was taping in front of a packed studio audience, one of the hottest tickets in television. 300 people were watching Johnny do what he'd done 11,000 times before, make America laugh. The monologue was going perfectly. The jokes were landing, and everything was proceeding exactly as planned, except for the little girl in the front row who couldn't stop crying. Sarah Mitchell was 10 years old, and 3 weeks ago, her entire world had collapsed. Her father, David Mitchell, had been killed in a car accident on February 15th. A drunk driver had run a red light and hit David's car on the driver's side. He died at the scene. He was 36 years old. David Mitchell had been the biggest Johnny Carson fan Sarah had ever known. His love for The Tonight Show was legendary in their small suburban Los Angeles neighborhood. He never missed an episode. He had a VCR that he'd programmed to record every show just in case he fell asleep. He'd quote Johnny's jokes at work. He'd practice Johnny's golf swing in their backyard. 5 months before the accident, David had done something crazy. He'd entered a radio contest, called in 300 times over 2 days to win tickets to a Tonight Show taping. When he finally won, he'd screamed so loud that Sarah came running from her room, thinking something was wrong. "We're going to see Johnny," David had shouted, picking Sarah up and spinning her around. "Front row tickets, you and me, kiddo. We're going to be so close we can see him breathe." His wife, Linda, had laughed at his enthusiasm. "It's just a TV show, David." "It's not just a TV show," David had said. "Seriously, it's Johnny Carson. It's the show that makes everything okay. No matter how bad your day is, Johnny makes it better." Sarah had counted down the days. She'd made a paper chain with her father, one link for each day until the taping. Every morning at breakfast, they'd tear off one link together, watching the chain get shorter as their special night got closer. They'd planned everything. What they'd wear, what they'd do if Johnny talked to the audience, how they'd try to make him laugh. Then February 15th happened. The paper chain was still hanging in Sarah's room. 11 links remaining when the police came to the door. After the funeral, Linda didn't know what to do with the tickets. They were non-transferable, one specifically in David's name. But throwing them away seemed wrong. They were the last thing David had been excited about, the last dream he'd been counting down to. The taping was still 3 weeks away. Going without him seemed impossible. Sarah made the decision for her. "I want to go, Mom," she said 5 days before the taping. "Dad would want us to go." "Honey, I don't know if that's a good idea. It might be too sad." "I know it'll be sad, but Dad called in 300 times to win those tickets. He was so happy. If we don't go, it's like his happiness dies, too. I want to keep it alive." Linda looked at her 10-year-old daughter, this small person who just lost her father, and was somehow thinking more clearly than the adults around her, and made a decision. They would go. The night of the taping, Sarah insisted on wearing her father's Tonight Show t-shirt. It was a men's large, comically oversized on her small frame hanging down to her knees. But it smelled like her dad, like his aftershave and his laundry detergent and the specific combination of things that meant safety and home. She also brought something else. Her father had kept his winning radio contest letter in his wallet, the official notification that he'd won the tickets. Sarah had found it after the accident and kept it in her pocket like a talisman. Proof that her dad was supposed to be here. Proof that this night was meant to include him. When they arrived at NBC Studios, Sarah was okay. Nervous, sad, but okay. She could do this. She could honor her dad by experiencing what he'd been looking forward to for 5 months. Then the show started. The warm-up comedian told jokes. The audience laughed. Doc Severson in the band played the theme. Ed McMahon did his introduction, and then Johnny Carson walked through the curtain. The reality crashed over Sarah like a wave. Dad should be here. Dad should be squeezing her hand right now, whispering, "There he is," that excited way he did. Dad should be the one laughing at the jokes, the one sitting on the edge of his seat, the one making this night magical. Instead, there was an empty space beside her where he should have been. Sarah started crying, not the quiet, controlled tears of someone trying to hold it together. The deep body-shaking sobs of genuine grief. She couldn't stop. The more she tried to control it, the worse it got. Linda pulled her close, trying to shield her from the people around them. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. We can leave if you want." But Sarah didn't want to leave. Leaving would mean giving up, would mean admitting that Dad's dream died with him. She shook her head, but she couldn't stop crying. The show continued. Johnny did his monologue. The audience laughed. Ed laughed at all the right moments. Doc and the band played their cues perfectly. And Sarah cried through all of it. She couldn't see through her tears. She couldn't hear Johnny's jokes over her own sobs. The show she'd waited 5 months for was happening right in front of her, and all she could feel was the absence of the person who should have been sharing it with her. By the time Johnny finished his monologue and was walking back to his desk, Linda made a decision. This wasn't working. Sarah was inconsolable, and staying was only making things worse. They needed to go. She caught the eye of a production assistant standing near the edge of the stage. "I'm sorry," Linda whispered, trying not to disturb the taping. "My daughter," she won't stop crying. "Her father just died. These were his tickets. I think we need to leave." The production assistant nodded sympathetically. This was unusual, but she understood. "Let me get you out quietly," she whispered back, starting to guide them toward the side exit. That's when Johnny saw them. He'd been walking back to his desk, about to introduce his first guest, when something in his peripheral vision caught his attention. Movement in the front row. A production assistant leading people out. A woman who looked devastated. A little girl in an oversized Tonight Show shirt, crying like her heart was breaking. Johnny stopped walking. Ed looked at him confused. The director in the booth spoke into Johnny's earpiece. "Johnny, you're on in 5 seconds. First guest introduction." But Johnny wasn't listening. He was watching the little girl being led away. And something about the scene wasn't right. The shirt she was wearing too big. Clearly someone else's. The way she was clutching something in her hand. The way she was looking back at the stage even as she was leaving, like she wanted to stay but couldn't. Johnny did something he'd never done in 21 years of hosting The Tonight Show. He walked off his mark and headed toward the front row. The director's voice in his ear became urgent. "Johnny, what are you doing? We're live to tape." Ed stood up from his chair. Doc stopped conducting. The audience murmured, but Johnny was already there, kneeling down in front of the production assistant and the Mitchell family. "Wait," Johnny said quietly. "Don't take them out yet." The production assistant froze, unsure what to do. Linda stared at Johnny Carson, her husband's hero, now inches away, speaking directly to her. Johnny looked at Sarah. She'd stopped crying from sheer shock, staring at him with red, swollen eyes. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Johnny asked gently. "Sarah," she managed. "Sarah, that's a beautiful name." He gestured to her shirt. "You're a Tonight Show fan." Sarah's lip trembled. "My daddy was." This was his shirt. "He died 3 weeks ago. These were his tickets. He was supposed to be here with me." The studio went silent. 300 people held their breath. Johnny looked at Linda, who nodded, tears streaming down her face. "He loved your show," Sarah continued, her voice breaking. "He never missed it. He called in 300 times to win these tickets. He was so happy. We were going to come together." Johnny felt something shift in his chest. He glanced back at Ed, who was watching with his hand over his mouth. Then Johnny looked back at Sarah. "Your daddy sounds like a wonderful man," Johnny said. "He was," Sarah whispered. "Listen to me, Sarah," Johnny said, his voice gentle but firm. "I know you're sad. I know this isn't how tonight was supposed to be, but your daddy wanted you to have this experience. He called in 300 times because he wanted you to be here, to see this show, to have this memory. And if we let you leave right now, crying, his dream for you doesn't come true." Sarah stared at him. "So, here's what I'm thinking," Johnny continued. "I'm going to bring you up here, right next to my desk. You're going to sit in Ed's chair." He glanced at Ed, who nodded immediately. And you're going to be part of the show tonight. And we're going to make sure that wherever your daddy is right now, he knows his little girl is okay. How does that sound? Sarah looked at her mother. Linda nodded, speechless. Okay, Sarah whispered. Johnny stood and held out his hand. Sarah took it, this tiny hand in the hand of the king of late night, and he led her toward the stage. The audience, would have been confused by the interruption, began to understand what was happening. Applause started, quiet at first, then building. Johnny helped Sarah up onto the stage. He walked her over to Ed's chair, the sacred chair where celebrities sat, the chair that had held presidents and movie stars and legends. You sit right here, Johnny said, making sure she was comfortable. Ed, you don't mind standing for a few minutes, do you? Not at all, Ed said, his voice thick with emotion. It's all yours, Sarah. Johnny walked back to his desk and sat down. He looked at Sarah, then at the camera, then back at Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny said, and his voice carried the weight of something important. I want to introduce you to someone. This is Sarah Mitchell. She's 10 years old. Her daddy was supposed to be here tonight. He won these tickets by calling a radio station 300 times, but Sarah's daddy passed away 3 weeks ago. He never got to keep his promise to bring her to see the show. The audience was completely silent. 300 people barely breathing. Sarah's daddy never missed a Tonight Show, not once. He loved the show. And Sarah loves the show, too, because her daddy loved it. Johnny paused, choosing his words carefully. So, tonight, we're going to do something special. We're going to make sure Sarah's daddy knows she's here, that she's okay, that his dream didn't die with him. Johnny looked over at Document Doc. You know what to play? Doc Severson, who'd played with Johnny for years and understood him like few others did, nodded. He turned to the band and counted them off. They began playing Here's That Rainy Day, one of Johnny's favorite songs, the same song B. Midler would sing to him 9 years later at his retirement, a song about loss and memory and the things we carry with us. Johnny didn't sing. He never sang on the show, but he did something else. He stood up, walked over to Sarah, and sat on the edge of Ed's desk right next to her. Your daddy can hear this, Johnny said softly, just to her. Wherever he is, I promise you he can hear this. And he's proud of you for being brave enough to come here tonight, Sarah cried. But there were different tears now, not hopeless tears, healing tears. As the song played, something extraordinary happened in that studio. 300 strangers who'd come to laugh found themselves crying instead. Not sad crying, cathartic crying. The kind of tears that come when you witness something real, something that matters more than entertainment. When the song ended, Johnny helped Sarah down from the chair. Before she went back to her mother, Sarah did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She hugged Johnny Carson. Not a polite, distant hug. A real hug. The kind of hug you give someone who's just saved you from drowning. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Daddy would have loved this. I know he would have, Johnny replied. And Sarah, he's proud of you for being brave, for keeping his dream alive. Linda stood at the edge of the stage, tears streaming down her face, mouthing, thank you to Johnny. Johnny nodded, then addressed the audience. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have some wonderful guests, but I think we all needed this moment first. During the commercial break, Johnny did something else. He asked the production assistant to bring Sarah and her mother backstage after the show. When they arrived, Johnny gave Sarah something from his desk, a pen he used for signing autographs engraved with the Tonight Show logo. He signed it for her. For Sarah and David Mitchell. Your dad had great taste in TV shows. With admiration, Johnny Carson. Then he made her a promise. Sarah, I want you to know something. Every year on March 8th, during my monologue, I'm going to tell a joke and dedicate it to your father, so you'll always know that someone remembers him. Someone remembers that he called in 300 times. Someone remembers that he loved this show. Okay, Sarah said, clutching the pen like it was made of gold. Johnny kept that promise for the next 9 years until his retirement in 1992. Every March 8th, Johnny would pause during his monologue and say, this next joke is dedicated to the memory of David Mitchell, who understood that laughter matters. Sarah always watched. Sarah Mitchell is 41 years old now. She's a grief counselor in Los Angeles, specializing in helping children who've lost parents. On her office wall hangs a pen framed alongside the letter her father received saying he'd won the Tonight Show tickets. She still watches reruns of the Tonight Show whenever she can find them. She still wears her father's shirt on March 8th every year. Still too big, still faded, still the most valuable thing she owns. And every March 8th, she lights a candle, watches that episode from 1983, which NBC eventually gave her on VHS, then DVD, then digital file, and remembers the night the king of late night stopped his show to save a little girl from drowning in grief. My dad gave me the Tonight Show, Sarah says now, but Johnny Carson gave me permission to grieve and still find joy. He showed me that my dad's love didn't die with him. It just found new ways to reach me. In 2015, Sarah's daughter named Danielle after David turned 10 years old. For her birthday, Sarah showed her the episode. They watched together as Johnny stopped his monologue, brought Sarah onto the stage, and proved that sometimes the most important thing you can do is notice someone who's hurting. Did you know him? Danielle asked. I mean, really know him? For 5 minutes, Sarah said. I knew him better than most people ever did because for 5 minutes, he stopped being Johnny Carson the host and became Johnny Carson the human being. And that made all the difference. Johnny Carson died in 2005, 22 years after that March night. When Sarah heard the news, she wrote a letter to his widow, Alexis. She explained what Johnny had done for her, how he'd saved her life in a way he probably never fully understood. A month later, she received a reply. Alexis wrote, Johnny remembered you. He remembered that night. He said it was one of the moments he was most proud of in 30 years of television. Thank you for reminding me that my husband's greatest gift wasn't making people laugh. It was making people feel seen. That's what Johnny did that night. He saw a hurting child and decided she mattered more than the show, more than the schedule, more than the 300 people in the audience and the millions watching at home. He stopped everything to make sure a 10-year-old girl knew she wasn't alone. That's what happens when you stop for people. You don't just change one night. You change a lifetime. If this story of grief, compassion, and the healing power of being seen moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to know that even in our darkest moments, someone might notice us and reach out. Have you ever been saved by a moment of unexpected kindness? Share your story in the comments and hit that notification bell for more true stories about the moments when television legends became guardian angels.